We got a pretty decent selection here, and that's thanks to the guys at Tucson Guns. Tucson Guns is a full-service gun shop, Class 3 dealer here in Tucson, Arizona. They've been in business for 7 years now. Ever since the beginning, they've been supporters of our websites and now our videos. What they've done is given us the opportunity with 10 different 380 pistols, compare, review, evaluate them, and yes, even get a little range time. So we do appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully we'll do it justice here. Thought we'd just quickly take a look at how these come apart, how they operate. We'll start out with this little Kel-Tec P3AT. The way I like to do it is I just take the lip of the magazine there and pull this little pin out. I just sort of use it as a pry to pull that pin. Pin comes out and the slide just comes off the top of the frame here. So we've got some decent rails. There's like a an insert here, probably aluminum insert or steel insert. There's just this one little part, and then your slide has your spring with its guide rod, and then you've got your barrel here, and it has pretty dirty barrel, but it's just basic rifling if I remember right. You put the barrel back in, you push your spring into place, cram your guide rod up through there. It sort of rests on the bottom of the barrel here, like that. And then again, you just want to make sure your little part here, this little piece, doesn't fall out. And then you can just slide the slide right back up onto your frame. Kind of put it in place there. There's that little spring that you just want to come from the top there. Push the spring down, kind of wiggle and drop that pin back into place. And now you're back to a operational Kel-Tec P3AT. Next up we've got the Diamondback Db 380, and again it's much like the Glock. So we're going to just release the tension there, drop down the we got to shoot it, pull the trigger, or pull back just slightly, drop down on the releases there. That's going to allow our slide to come off. We're going to have a frame that's similar to the Glock, but not exactly the same. And then we've got a frame that's actually, or a slide, excuse me, that's actually pretty nice for a little 380. You've got this little spring with a guide rod, and then the little barrel. For this one we're looking at a little rifle, just plain rifling. Nice little slide. You can see the underside there of how the sights are installed, and then very Glock-like. It's easy enough to put that spring back in, shove the guide rod. It'll fit into the back of the barrel here, easy enough. And then again, it's got frame rails up front and in back. The rear ones are probably attached to the front ones, but it's hard to tell. These might actually be two separate. Well, I'm not sure how it's built, but you definitely got 4 frame rails just like a Glock, and it just slides right back on, and you're good to go. Next up, we've got a Ruger LCP, very much again like the Kel-Tec, and to use it to pry that pin out of there. And the slide will just pull right off the frame. Again, very much like the Kel-Tec. We've got a spring and a guide rod. This one seems to be metal. I think the Kel-Tec's was plastic. Then we've got a nice little barrel there. And standard rifling. These are not all clean barrels. Pretty easy to put that back, that recoil spring back, and then you just slide the slide up onto the frame. You can see again that it uses that spring to capture, only this time you have a little more room to work with to get the pin back in. Kind of wiggle it just a bit, push it past that spring, and then you're good to go. Ruger LCP. Next up, the Taurus TCP. Looks to be fairly similar. We've got our magazine. Once the slide is locked back, we'll use this magazine again as a tool. And once we get it started there, we just pull it right out. Let the slide come forward. Again, very much Kel-Tec like. Spring, very much like the Ruger, the metal version of the Kel-Tec. Barrel. Simple rifling. Yep, pretty simple rifling again. Different shapes and a little different style, but basically the Kel-Tec design it looks like. Long continuous rail, still different design on the inside. And again, we pull it back to the slide stop and insert that pin. Again, you've got this little spring to overcome. And it's back in. TCP. Okay, next up we've got the Kahr P380. More like a SIG. You just sort of pull it back to here. Maybe it's more like a 1911, I don't know. Anyway, you pull it to this little notch instead of the actual slide lock. This part comes out. Pull the trigger, and the slide comes off of the frame. The frame seems to have some plastic rails with metal rails in the back. And then we've got the slide. It's spring with a pretty sturdy guide rod, and then normal rifling, I guess. A little bit more rifling, but or a little bit different for sure, but it just looks like standard, I think. It's kind of hard to see in the viewfinder. Kind of hard to see in the viewfinder. And we just set that back in. Again, these are all based off the 1911 so far, really, but just depending on which one we're looking at here, they assemble, in different ways. Having a little trouble getting that to be happy with its orientation, I guess. I guess it makes a difference which way the spring is when you start. Sort of two springs kind of twisted together here. Boy, is that tough to get back together, or what? Why is that? Why is that? I can see it. Okay, so I really had to look from the bottom to let that guide rod come through. Kind of tricky. I'm sure once I've owned one, it would be a little better. Now, I hope I'm missing something, but is this plastic rails? Huh. And they definitely seem like they have a lifespan. So we're going to have to take a better look at that. Of course, it's got some steel or some metal rails back here, but we'll have to take a closer look at this one for sure. And again, we sort of just bring it back to where lock here will fit in. And now it's back in place there. Bring it back. And then no problems. Interesting. A real solid pistol. I'm not sure what's going on with those rails. I'll have to do a little bit more research on that for sure. Glad we're doing these series. Next up is the Guardian from North American Arms, the Guardian 380. And let's see what we've got here. A little button here. So I'm sure it has something to do with this button here. But for the life of me, I can't figure it out. Cannot figure out how you're supposed to be able to get to that button. I guess like this? Nope. Okay, this one stumped me and I don't have the manual. So we're not going to learn how this one comes apart. We'll have to stay tuned for some other video on that. Then we've got the Magnum Research Baby Desert or Micro Desert Eagle. Typically these kind of guns like to come apart with a, since they're fixed barrels, they like to kind of release back here somewhere. I don't, however, see where that would happen. Okay, I figured it out. So on this one there's this little notch there, and when it comes back to there you can twist that barrel and come up and then it just slides off. So your bottom piece is a very solid little, I'm guessing aluminum, although it looks like stainless, but I'm guessing aluminum. Looks like there's some buffers or something here. And real solid though. I mean, that's why it feels so solid in your hand, I guess. Doesn't look like a lot of moving parts. Looking at the upper here, we've got a couple of small recoil springs. Interesting, going down either side. And this interesting little interlocking barrel gizmo. So I guess if we were to slide that back down, and it would let us come out one way or the other. It will, and there's our little barrel. And we're looking at some different kind of darker rifling here, but some rifling, standard rifling, and we can put that back in. It's interesting, it's got an octagon shape or a flattened shape to the outside, but the inside of course is round, but the back side is round. So a little extra tooling they did there, I suppose for the looks or for purpose, I'm not sure. Maybe it is for purpose, so that if you had to use a wrench if it got dirty or something. So anyway, I'm going to put that lug back up top, put this spring back in on this side, and they sort of just fit on either side here. You can see this spring just fits on either side with a guide rod. And then you can see now where the guide rods and everything fit into this bottom here. So now we'll start it off. This looks like it could be a little bit tedious, but again, I'm sure once you own one, it becomes pretty easy. It wasn't too difficult to figure out intuitively. So now I've got guide rods coming down both sides, and again I'm going to lift that barrel up to where it looks like it should be. Move this, come on down, and I'm not under tension, that's the problem. So what do I need to do here? I need to come back until it hits that notch, which is under spring tension. Now I'm going to bring this lug down and allow it to rotate into position. So the lug on the barrel actually holds the whole thing together. Genius. Real interesting little design. I really like it. I said I want to like this one a lot, and definitely I'm Still impressed with its setup here. You know, one of the reasons you can like firearms, or one of the reasons that, you know, people like firearms, is their machinery, the mechanics behind them. I like looking at stuff like that. It's interesting seeing how they've, you know, come up with a better way to build a mousetrap. Next, we're looking at the Walther PPK-S. This is the older style, so we're going to pull down on the trigger guard. We're going to pull back on the slide, and then up. And once it comes up there, we kind of go forward, and now we've got this pretty big, massive spring. We've got a fixed barrel, which is fixed to the slide, and then we've got, or excuse me, fixed to the frame, and then we've got the slide itself. So, interesting setup. So older, like I say, I consider it more European type of style, which makes sense since this is a German gun. And we'll bring it up again, dropped it back into place, and then lock it into place with the trigger guard, and we're back in business. So that's the Walther PPK-S. Then we've got the Bersa 380 Plus. Probably should do the Walther next, just because they're Walthers. Totally different design here, totally different system. Excuse me. So we've got an empty gun there. Next, we'll pull down on this gizmo, I assume. Maybe I pull the trigger, push up, pull down, wiggle from side to side. I can't figure out what's stopping it. Maybe the safety has to be on safe. I'm sure it doesn't need to be cocked. I suspect that safety needs to be on safe, and I don't have the key for this one. So unfortunately we're not going to take apart the PK380 in this video. Next up is the Thunder 380 Plus. I would say it should be like the Walther there, but I guess it's a little different. Let's figure it out. So normally these break up open in the back there, but I don't see that happening, so I suspect I'm going to pull down on this lever instead. Okay, I pulled it all the way back, and then I pull down on this lever, and now I can pull that, rock that slide off. Again, barrel fixed to the frame, big heavy spring, slide blows back. Just kind of push that up, insert that barrel through the hole, and then bring it back far enough so that the slide can kind of rotate or rock back into position. I'm holding it with the trigger finger there. I'd say pretty easy for a right-handed, probably a little tougher if you're left-handed to get used to that, but I'm sure it's doable. I didn't want this to be a gunsmithing video, but hopefully this is an indication of the various ways to build that better mousetrap. You can see that there's, you know, the Kel-Tec, which gets the bad rep, but I bet you, you know, people weren't aware how many guns copied really close after that Kel-Tec. You've got your other means, and again, hopefully this illustrates some of the ways that you're going to need to take it apart to clean it, and the ease to do that, or the difficulty, and then of course some of the internals, just to see, you know, how simple or complex they are.
The guys and gals of GunWebsites.com encourage you to take a CCW class every year, practice at least once a month, and carry every day. Thanks for watching GunWebsites.com.